Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Purpose Pursuer webinar that we hold on the fourth Wednesday of every month at noon Pacific. Except next month in December, we're going to hold it on the third Wednesday because the fourth Wednesday happens to be Christmas. And I know how much you all love this conversation, but I have a feeling you have other things going on at noon Pacific on the fourth Wednesday next month. So we will be on the third Wednesday next month at noon Pacific. Thank you so much for joining us. And today we are going to be focusing on principle number 4 of Blueprint. The Blueprint process principles are 4. There are 4 of them, and we'll be focusing on the last one today. What's super cool about what we do here on these webinars, if I may say, is that we have a principle that we start with. So the 4 of us who are going to be speaking today, we all know we're speaking about a particular principle. Like today, it's principle number 4. But what is so freaking cool is that each of us, all 4 of us, have unique blueprints. So consequently, I'm going to start the conversation off, but I'm going to be speaking from my blueprint about principle number 4, and then Annie, and then Brandon, and then Frank. And we'll have some discussion time, question time in between. But this is such a good expose, if you will, of how each of our blueprints are so unique that even though we're talking about essentially the same thing, we're talking about it in unique ways according to our blueprint. So, principle number 4, just in case you don't know, is that process purpose is an infinite journey. So even though we, in the blueprint process, we do research to unveil your blueprint, and then we move into application to apply what we've learned about your blueprint, we don't stop there. Actually, in the beginning of the blueprint process, that's exactly what I did. I stopped at figuring out someone's blueprint and helping them apply it. And I said goodbye to them. It's the biggest travesty of my life. I wish I could go back and re-meet those people and help them keep going with their blueprint. Because as principle number 4 suggests, it's an ongoing journey. I uncovered my blueprint in 2006, and I I look at the same blueprint every day, but every time I look at it, I see something different. I see a new application, a new insight that now I get to go and apply in all of my life. So, blueprint is an ongoing journey, pursuing your purpose, meeting your people, gathering your community, and then doing things with your community. It just keeps going. We never, never stop. And it's so important to approach it with that eyes wide open perspective, because then you'll actually see the new insights that you are gaining daily in order to do what you're here to do. All right. So I want to talk about it. Principle number 4, I want to talk about it from my perspective. Again, this is from my blueprint and from my experience. And then it'll be Annie's turn and Brandon and then Frank. From my experience, this has had such a huge impact. The fact that blueprint is an ongoing journey, because in my life, I've had different chapters, if you will, just as all of us have, and some of them are not so great. But because I know my blueprint, I can look back at those tragedies, those challenges, those tumultuous times, and I can see how my blueprint was actually being furthered because of those challenging times. And that's incredibly relieving to me because I've made lots of mistakes. I'm sure you haven't in your life. I'm sure you've been perfect at every turn. I, however, have not been. And so to be able to go back to those times and instead of looking at them through the lens of regret, I can instead look at them through the lens of my blueprint, and I can see exactly what was happening during the challenging time, even during the mistake. And the reason why we know this is we know that God uses everything for his glory. And we of our own selves don't have the power to waylay him, do we? We can't make a mistake that he is like, oh, crap, what am I going to do now? Like that just doesn't happen. So by looking back through the lens of blueprint and having the faith that God is my maker and not me myself, I see those tragedies very, very differently. And I see how God was using them. He was using my mistakes, He was using my challenges to hone and fashion and strengthen. He was using them for His glory so that I'm better today because of all that crap and the mistakes, etc. Here's the other thing that knowing my blueprint does for me today. That's in the past. That's cool. But what about today? Today, life isn't perfect, right? We still go through our ups and downs. We still have challenges and things that happen that we react to. So here's what I do today. You can see behind Brandon and behind Frank, you can see what a blueprint looks like. Thank you, Brandon. That's what a blueprint looks like. And we each have that on our wall. I'm looking at mine right now. Because I have that on my wall, it's like a true north for me.
Mm.
So if let's say I'm going through a challenging time, or maybe I'm in a bad mood and I don't know why, which is so debilitating, right? When we're in a bummed out mood and we don't know why. I don't know about you, but for me, I feel shame about it. Like, what is my problem? But if I go look at my blueprint, I use it as a blueprint. That analogy actually works really, really well. If you think about the blueprint of a building, if the contractor is building the building, he or she's going to return to the blueprint again and again and again to make sure that the building is being built correctly. Well, for me, if I'm going through a time that's confusing, I feel lost, I feel frustrated, I feel down, whatever, I can go stand in front of that thing, and within seconds, I see. It's like the light comes on, that little light bulb over my head, like cartoon characters. And it's an aha moment for me. Now, my circumstances don't change, but I now see the blueprint player that was either being bruised by the circumstance, which then, of course, is going to put me into a bad mood, and or I see a blueprint player that I can use to navigate my way through the challenging experience. So yeah, blueprint doesn't make your life a bed of roses. It does, however, give you the clarity and the direction to know how to deal with those challenging times. And always it makes you feel better. As I mentioned, when I'm in a bad mood, I feel bad about myself. I feel shame for being in a bad mood. I know that's silly. But when I go to my blueprint and I see why, because those certain players will pop out to me. If I'm standing and looking at the blueprint like Frank and Brandon, there's about 100 things on there. And certain ones will literally pop out to me in seconds. And the clarity of why my blueprint is being abused by that particular challenge or circumstance removes any feeling of shame and responsibility from me so that I can then identify which players I need to bring onto the court to navigate myself out of that challenging circumstance. It's incredibly powerful. And this whole thing gets right back to principle number 4. Whether it's your past, your present, or your future, your blueprint remains the same. And the question that blueprint answers is, who are you really? Are you your past? Are you your present? Are you your future? None of the above. You are your blueprint, and you're here to express and live that blueprint. And that's it. All right. So before we go on to Annie, are there any questions, any shares that anybody here in this room would like to bring up now?
I love the thought that a player or an item in your blueprint gets bruised.
Mm.
That's something that I don't always think about. I look at my blueprint and I'm always thinking, okay, what do I have that I can use? And when you explained it to me one time of no, 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 one of your players is getting bruised, one of your items is getting bruised, that shifted how I look at my blueprint when I'm going through something difficult. That absolutely changed it for me. And I've really appreciated that.
Yeah, it gives you a sense of validation, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Instead of,
Yeah.
oh, dang, I'm wrong in this situation. It's like
Yes.
you can give yourself some empathy right there then in that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I get it. Thank you, Annie. Yes, Frank.
Well, I think that came up when you first mentioned that word regret. I mean, coming from you, that's one thing, because it's like, wow. But it's like regret as far as useless. a useless thing, a waste of time, a loss, a failure. And then what my blueprint actually has caused me to do is actually start reframing that to like, we're not going to avoid that, but what it serves a purpose, these things. And and the thing is, on my blueprint, it's like tuition. It's all tuition. You know,
Ah,
it's tuition. There's no time, effort, resource, energy that gets wasted. It's all tuition, and it's all in of use in learning life's lessons. And although regret is something that has repulsed me in the past, it's actually necessary. It's because it's like you can't get from there to there without that. It's like a tempering thing. Like when metallurgists use that, it's like, okay, you need to get, heated up and yeah. So that's what causes the strengthening in order to be continuously useful and in service. So yeah.
love it. Love the analogy to blacksmithing, by the way. That is so super cool. Thank you. Anything else before we go on to Miss Annie? Awesome. All right, Annie, what you got regarding principle number 4?
Well, when we were talking about that purpose is an infinite journey, for those that don't know, I started with Blueprint in 2020. I was heavily involved in the program for 2 years, and then I stepped out to go follow a different path to pursue something else in my career. And then when I turned around and came back, I pulled up my blueprint again because again, like I just said, I was looking for those tools in my kit that would help me as I made a shift. And what I can see looking at my blueprint, I can see statements that I made of where I was and what I was struggling with then. But what I have noticed over the last month that I have been back in the program and heavily involved is that now I can see that I still have those exact same tools. They haven't changed, but now I can see how they apply today. And that hasn't changed. And so the purpose that showed up so clearly in 2020 and 2021 is still my purpose now. That has not shifted. The way that I'm using my tools, the way that I'm using my players has changed. But the purpose and the cause are still there. I'm much more clear on how to use them now. And I'm blessed that I'm able to use them in my day-to-day life and my career. But that hasn't changed. My blueprint hasn't changed. It is still with me. And so what I've learned in the last 4 years is that as I'm working with people, specifically in small business, but when I'm working with people, when they're struggling, I use the tools that I have in my blueprint to talk to them and ask them to narrow their focus on what is important to them rather than what they do. Because what I see is that people that don't have a blueprint, that are, surprised and they're struggling, when I start pointing out to them what is inside of their blueprint, it hones in their process. And then as we start working through the blueprint process, they're able to see what tools they have and use that. And so one of the things that we identified early on in my process is that I'm supposed to help guide other people along their journey. And I'm moving them from generalized knowledge about who they are and what they do to personalized study in their development. And the thing that I have loved the most is understanding and having that perspective of what I discovered years ago still applies today as I'm working with them and being able to adjust not only who they are and what they do, but what God has put inside of them. So many adults that I work with, I see them and they are just frazzled. They're trying to figure out, what is my purpose in life? I know I'm supposed to find my purpose, but if we sit down and we work on their blueprint, they are able to look at what God has put on the inside and do the inside work. And then God uses that to show them what they have on the outside. And I love that. I adore that. I have been able to watch people in my life light up and realize that it's not just what they had in the beginning, that it's always been with them. It's part of who they are. And maybe part of their purpose is to use that moving forward. And so those are just some of the things that I've really, really, really loved about having the blueprint, having it in my life, and being able to see that 4-year journey that I've been on, and then help others understand what it can help them do to move forwards in that.
Yeah. I love how the way you described it is it's so clear that God is working with an infinite journey within you. So as you're
Yes.
moving through, you really explained well how this is an eternal something within you.
Yes.
And no matter what your circumstances are, what the conditions are on the outside, you're recognizing that the power, the real power is on the inside. And so, and now because of everything that God's done in you to this point, you're now turning that around and using it to help other people identify what their inside and eternal is.
It is so amazing to see how he is using that to help everyone. Realize that it's not who they are becoming. That's not it. It's not a goal.
Mm,
It's not a finish line. It is inside of them the whole time. It's the full journey.
yeah.
And I just, that purpose, it's always there. Your
Yeah.
purpose does not change.
I love that. I so appreciate you bringing that up. I was just talking to someone the other day how about how the self-development industry is based on this idea that there is more that you can be and that you to go out and accrue more knowledge or more experience and then you'll become the person you're meant to be. But as
I got
we're
plenty of knowledge. I
right.
got plenty of books. That's
Yeah.
not a scarcity thing here. But what I can tell you is that even if you read everything, the more you use, the more you work on it, all you're still doing is just working on the same purpose and how you're going to use the exact same purpose.
Yep. Yep. That's always been there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that and does such an amazing thing. Like we talk a lot about the reticular activating system. And if
Mm-hmm.
we see ourselves as needing to always develop, like there's something wrong with me or something deficient in me that I always need to develop, then our reticular activating system is just going to keep bringing us evidence that we are broken, that we need to be fixed. Instead, if we focus on, okay, I'm an expression of God and God is perfect, so that expression must always be perfect. Now our reticular activating system is going to bring us evidence of that, and our entire
Yes.
experience will change. And as you've identified, because we're seeing ourselves as perfect, we can now help others see how they too are perfect.
Yes, it's showing them that they were not created with flaws. It's showing them that they were created by God, perfect as they are, and
Yeah.
how to use that.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Like, why else would we be here?
Mhm.
Thank you,
Yeah,
dear. Any other
absolutely.
shares or questions regarding Annie's talk?
Yeah, Annie, two things jump out at me there and resonate. One is the idea that you're not trying, like somebody going through Blueprint, it's not about a goal of giving them a purpose or something like that. What I like to use is the word uncover. To me,
Yes,
it's an uncovering. It's a helping somebody become aware of what is already within them. We're not giving
absolutely.
them anything. We're not telling them anything. It's an
Hmm.
uncovering, and I even use sweeping away the gunk, a clearing away of the gunk that just builds up over time. And even when you clear it, and here's where the idea of infinite comes in, even when you clear it away, you're still going about your life and there's still gunk accumulating, which means that it is an ongoing, lifelong process to continually kind of assess and sweep away the gunk and uncover what's already in there.
That is
Um,
perfect. That's brilliant. Yes.
yeah, that came up for me. And then the other thing that came up for me was you mentioned working with small businesses, and it just reminded me of we so often it's like, what do you do? And you're in a
Hmm.
small business, you're the CFO, you're the CEO, and it's like, what do you do? And it's like, well, these are my roles and responsibilities. And in the military, it was, well, I'm a pilot, I'm a naval aviator. And that becomes people's identity. And if they have never done the work to uncover Blueprint, to sweep away all that they really are, that's who then runs the risk of kind of getting tying their identity to a role or a
Yes.
job or what they do versus their blueprint. And so those two things really resonated with me.
Brilliantly said. Yes. One of the deals is, you have to get people past what they do. If that's one of the first questions that you ask people, I'm constantly asking people in a networking event, stop asking that question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not the first question you should ask somebody. Ask them what they're excited about. If you'll ask somebody what they're excited about, you'll find out what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Brandon, I did see you, Frank. I'll be with you in a second. I loved how you use that specific example of pilot, but being a pilot, we know it has a time frame, much like a professional football player or a mom. Like there's a time frame around that. And so I'm so grateful for the work that you do. I actually shared your work with someone today, and she was so gratified that you do what you do because we have people coming out of the military specifically, and they've been told that this is who they are, and it's a box that's supposed to look the same across the boards, and you, because of what you're doing and because of who you are, to Annie's point, you're helping these people break out of that mold to recognize who they are within that role. And so now that that role is over, they're retired, what next? What can they do now? I so appreciate you're helping them extract from the role the truth of their identity, the eternal, that they now can employ somewhere else. So thank you for what you're doing. Frank, what you got? What do you have?
Well, so my purpose recently has become unloading, unpacking, and deploying. And the two ideas, lots of ideas, but the two ideas that I got from Annie was this idea about justifying. People justify who they are. And what I get to do is on a weekly basis, I step into this environment where people actually are justifying who they've been and what they did. And they're stuck. They're chained to that. I'm a gang leader. I'm a marked man in the prison. Blah, blah, blah. I need a program. I need somewhere to alight that's going to allow me to reintegrate. And it's like, hey, look, you can either justify and live in that environment of blaming, self-blame. That's fun. Or we can actually have a conversation built on useful action and purpose. So that's one of the ideas that I really loved going. And the other thing is this whole idea for me, the turnaround, the reframe of fixing versus using what's already, and that's become one of my favorite words, using what's already there, using what's already usable and without perfection.
Yes.
It's like, okay, I would be afraid of doing this, but it calls to me. So take up what's there and use it and see what God is trying to teach me with that. And it's like, wow, it's amazing. It's like without trying to create an outcome. It's just that, no, this is where my intention is to serve and to be that Sherpa, that guide. And I don't know what's all here, but it draws me. So put it out there. So yeah, I loved it.
Love it. Thank you, Frank. Yeah, I appreciate the work that you're doing too in the prisons, because just ironically, just like Brandon working with ex-military, they too, the inmates have this very set notion of who they are. And oh my gosh, how freeing to find out who they actually are in God's eyes. Seth and Bill, at any time, please feel free to jump in and share or ask questions. So before we go to Brandon, do you guys have anything? Please don't feel obligated.
Never obligated, Tammy.
Good.
I just want to hit it again, like the important to them versus what they do counters everything that you experience, whether it's going onto LinkedIn, whether it's a networking event, whether it's military gatherings. We love to get in our little nests and talk about the senior guy and all the stuff he's done because we want to emulate what he did so we can be him someday. And oh my gosh, it was all about that. So the important to you part hugely resonated from the standpoint that most of my community is associated with people in the middle of storms. So if you're in the middle of a storm and you don't understand blueprint and design and what's important to you, that storm is going to take you all over to the place, up and down and 10,000 leagues under the sea. So that early work and that discovery can really limit, or in some way at least equip, during storms that we know are going to come in life. But I think the application, though, is when you continue to go in storms without equipped with blueprint. I had to confess that I was so used to the storm that when one finished, I was just waiting for the next one. So without that equipage, it just kept repeating and repeating. What's the next storm? What's the next storm? What's the next storm? And that became mindset. So flipping that script, seeing my blueprint, seeing God's design, seeing his presence even in the storm, and equipping in the storm, that shift in perspective fundamentally changes the way you look at your life and how you interact with everything around you. So that was an excellent connection.
Lovely. As you were talking, I was thinking of how blueprint is an anchor, isn't it, in a storm?
Yeah.
It anchors you to that eternal. It's what we're trying to talk about. It's not the circumstances. Seth, you brought this whole topic up to us a couple of weeks ago because you've gone through what you've gone through recently with your mom, and you were recognizing she is not the ice tray. But that's what we can get so consumed by, is our trappings, our routine, our roles, relationships, mistakes, criminal record. And we mistakenly think that that's who we are. So I appreciate all of you, because you're helping people anchor themselves in that which is eternal and God's. So thank you. Brandon, you ready?
Yeah. So you all know I like to kind of tune into what is happening during the conversation and try to make connections between those things. So something that's coming up for me right now is the idea of the golden path fallacy, which I have talked about a lot now the last 6 months. I don't know. Tammy, I don't know when the first time I told you about that idea was, but I don't know. I feel like it's about 6 months or so, but
I agree.
sometime in 2024.
Yeah.
And the golden path fallacy is everywhere, everywhere. But what really clued me into it was being in the military, where there is a prescribed path, depending on which service you're in, which branch, which community within that branch. There is a prescribed path to take to both promote and to get into positions of increased responsibility and to just continue for an entire career. There are prescribed paths. And what I realized was that a couple things, but one, it's that they even brand it as the golden path. And what I realized is that, I don't have to take every step that my mentors, that my colleagues, that the people who have gone before me tell me to take. They're telling me that based off of their blueprints, whether they know that or not, based off their experience, what worked for them, and what generally is what they think works within the bureaucracy or be it in the organization that you happen to be in. But that doesn't mean that it's the right path for me. And really, the only way you can examine a path that you're on or that you might like to take is to understand blueprint, whether you call it that or not, right? But it's to understand what you value, what is important to you, what you believe your purpose is. Because until you do that, you're going off of what I just mentioned, what other people essentially are telling you to do, the only thing you see, the only thing you know. And then, we do go off gut feel, we do go off intuition, which I think is very important to be able to tap into that intuition. But until you can name it or until you can kind of describe it, it's kind of still, you're kind of still subject to it versus being able to say, this is what I'm feeling. This is what's important about that to me. Right. And now you see it and you can do things with it then. And so, and that is a lifelong thing because context always matters. So, golden path fallacy applies in the military. Golden path fallacy applies to how you want to invest your money. Golden path fallacy applies to just standard traditional in our culture. Grow up, high school, college, job, go up the ranks, retire at 65, be on a beat. What, like, all of these things are coming at you every single day and always will be. And so, in that way, the ability to have that self clarity and to be able to examine whatever path it is, to examine it and see where that alignment is between the path and what you're meant to be doing, your purpose, that continual reassessment has to be there, lifelong, infinite. I'll pause there.
I so appreciate this. I love first of all, I love the golden path fallacy. And yeah, I think you're right. You brought that to my attention maybe early summer, spring. And even a golden path, you could see it as going for forever. And you just identified that. Like from the day you're born, pretty much there's a path, a prescribed path that is so tempting to fall into because everyone else does, supposedly. That's what everyone kind of expects. So, this questioning that you're bringing up, and I know you particularly look for people who are willing to question, is this the right path for me? But you might question something. And I think this is why a lot of kids get stuck into the corner in the schoolroom, with the dunce cap on their head or sent to the principal's office because they're constantly questioning. They're your people. They're constantly questioning. But that questioning is required to do what you're talking about. And then you add onto it, you do, the knowledge of their blueprint. So now when they question, they actually have something to look at, to filter through, to determine if it's a good fit for them, which pieces maybe of the golden path fit them, which don't. And if it doesn't fit for them, what would fit for them better? It's one thing to question. We all know the power of questioning, but what you give them is the ability. It's like it's a map for them, and one of a kind, so that they can take their one of a kindness and do something with it, as we're all meant to do. So I appreciate you bringing up the golden path fallacy. It's a great fit for this principle number 4.
Yeah. And I just want to mention too that somebody may be on a path that is perfect for them, perfectly suited for them. But to me, the fallacy comes in when it's unexamined.
Oh,
If you just are on the path because somebody else said to do it and you're enjoying it, you're having fun, right? And I'm not saying jump off the path. What I'm saying is until you can really examine that, it's how do you know? How do you know?
Mm.
And the more you're able to examine it, the more you can make tweaks maybe within the path, right? Maybe the path's pretty wide and there's sub paths.
yes.
And maybe you're on one sub path. And until you can examine it, you don't really know that, wow, this other sub path would actually align even more to my blueprint. It's that intentionality and that awareness that shifts it. You shift out of the fallacy part.
Mm.
Knowledge of forethought. There's an Aristotle quote that you keep reminding me of, and that is that self-knowledge is the beginning of all wisdom. It's so hard to gain, and that's why blueprint process is so helpful. Annie, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say it's very common, and I think Brandon has a perfect example of people get on the golden path. They're going down the path. They think they're on a path. They're just following the dots. And then they enter into what most people would consider to be the midlife unraveling.
Mm.
And that is where they start to do that examining. That's what popped into my head, was when people actually start to examine, this is the path. Maybe it's the path that their family put them on, or their college put them on, or even their high school in some cases. And they're put on this path and they don't question, is this the right path for me? Am I supposed to be on this path? Why am I on this path? And then to hit that point where they start questioning and it starts unraveling. And that's why their blueprint is so important, is because then they know what they have inside of them to show them, this is my path, or I should take a sub path. I should take a different path. And so as he was talking, I was just sitting here thinking, how many people would have been spared the Ferrari or the choices had they been equipped with a blueprint to go, oh, this path doesn't fit me, and that's okay. Rather than beating themselves up. If they'd had their blueprint, it could have been different. And so I think that's why, Brandon's, his theory of this golden path fallacy is so important. And growing up as a military brat, I completely agree that, they stick you on the path and you're told to go on the path, and then you get out and you're like, wait, where'd the path go? What happened to the path? So I really appreciate, that he teaches people, you don't have to be on this path. You have a different path, and it's okay.
And it's interesting too. I love the golden part of it, because there's a lot of prestige, isn't there, in the military, right? Mm-hmm. Brandon, Seth, there's a lot of prestige. And that's what you were talking about, Seth, is you in parties and get-togethers, gatherings, you would clump together and look at the dude with all the stars and the stripes on their uniform. How do we get on that path? And it can be so attractive. So I'm so glad, Annie, that you brought up the Ferrari. I was thinking of a Corvette. But we all hear that, the danger of the midlife crisis, like something to be scared of, but not with
You're finding your other path.
Yes, the sub path. Yeah, Frank, go ahead.
You just brought back something with the ribbons and things. I remember as a kid, and this deals with the heart's desire. It's like, well, I want to wear that. I want to belong. I want to be seen as valuable. I want to be seen as useful, and how I really wanted to be a Cub Scout. But the other idea that I had is like the heart's desire that's unrevealed and actually kind of like foggy with most people. It's obscured because of this tethering they have to this identity. But the thing I was relating with what Brandon is this golden path, and I immediately began hearing the living out of somebody else's suitcase idea. The putting together the dream board, but they're not your dreams, Frank. These are dreams that you think that you ought to have, that other successful people that you really admire, you ought to have these. And when you actually can calm down without being judged or criticized or having somebody waylay you with you're stupid and wrong, and just have that kind of confidence that comes from clarity, where people actually share things with you that they wouldn't actually share with their own family for fear of being laughed at. And that's when things emerge. And it's like, I can actually uncover or unload and unpack who I really am. And I don't need anybody's permission.
Yeah.
About it. And then there's a freedom in doing that, where that's the aha lights start going on across the table or through the glass, where people just kind of go, wow, I never really thought of like this before. And I didn't think this was something for people like me. And it's like, yeah, it's totally. And then they see the vista, they see the road opening up, and yeah, it's exciting.
That's a great word, vista. Seth or Bill, do you guys want to weigh in?
I guess the thing that
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm getting feedback here for a second. I was looking at the purpose number 4 again, and it says something in there about eternity, which is a pretty big place. So the question that comes up for me on the golden path is, whose golden path? And if eternity is so big, that means there's probably multiple timelines.
Mm.
So which one are you on? And what are you doing now? And where's it going? So I think what Blueprint does in that sense is at least, as you said earlier, kind of clears the slate. It puts all those fundamental things that come out when you've given a chance to think about it for a while, and with some coaching or somebody helping you out, determining which of those things is really yours. But I obviously love reading quotes. I like people of history. They've got a lot of wisdom there. But when it came to guidance in my youth, it's real easy to fall into the trap of going down the right path. Now, of course, I never had that real problem because I used to violate all of the should do's and would do's and could do's because I never knew what I wanted to do. And none of them seemed to satisfy me. So I kind of discounted most of it anyway. But that's me. There's people that follow that path and do great. And that's cool too. But I don't know that I really have any more to add to that because, again, each one of us is on a different path. Occasionally we come to a crossroads together and we all say hi and share our information, share our discoveries. And all I would say is just keep doing that. If you're stuck in the material, you're not going to get anywhere. That part I have learned is kind of like the standard. Because everybody I thought I should look up to, I found out very quickly are fallible, as unfallible. So in the end, you really have to think about it. You can't just focus on what you think you should be because you need to know why you want to be. So anyhow, I don't know where I'm going with all this because at the end of the day, I run into people that are so caught up in their own fog, they can't see the trees, they can't see the road surface anymore. They just want clarity of some kind. So you got to get away from the noise.
Well, that's what I felt. As soon as you started talking, Bill, I just felt a great sense of peace descend upon me. So I don't know where you're going with this either, but I appreciate the peace.
Jamie, I'm glad that you said that because I noticed that too.
Did you?
Bill started
Yeah.
talking, and it's like I was being quiet, of course, but then it just felt like everything else was more quiet. There's a stillness. There was a stillness there which I think that we so often try to avoid.
Well, just ask yourself a question when you get that noise and that amping up sense that comes about, and ask the question, am I getting enough hermit time?
Hermit time. How do you define hermit time?
Time by yourself.
That's a good one. Thank you, Bill. Thanks for the peace. Seth, did you have something you wanted to say before we go on to Mr. Frank?
I can't follow that up, so let's
Yes,
go
you
to
can.
Frank.
Oh, we want to hear it.
Yeah, number 4, the purpose of an infinite journey. It's so it's so inviting. Because when some of the environments I go into, it's based on time. There's I'm going to be released soon. I have a court date soon, which is going to determine how much more time is going to be required of me in a place I have no control over. My sentence, all that kind of thing. And but at the bottom of all that, it's like time is an infinite journey, no matter where you are. And this goes for inmates as well as for people driving on the freeway at the same hour. It's like no matter where you are, there's an opportunity to deploy. And and again, if without the blueprint, people are not really clear what to do, and or in other words, I have all this stuff. Like a case in point, an inmate will go, well, I'm just yeah, what's next for you, John? Well, I could always go back to drywall. And it's said just like that. And it's like, okay, that's good. That's good. Because we're talking about survival. But can you open it up to more than survival? Because it's like, hey, nothing wrong with putting bread on the table and keeping body and soul together, but where does it go from there? Well, where's the heart's desire? It's not in fentanyl. It's not in gang affiliate. And then thankfully I'm there for that reason. I'm a chaplain. We get to talk about God. We get to talk about the Savior. We get to talk about the good news, the best news. And it's like, yeah, but putting it into a context of, okay, where to from here? And it's not just getting out of here. Because it's like many of them, you've gotten out of here countless times before. And so we're much further on this infinite journey that's actually outside of time, but it does involve now and now. So that's what I had.
Thank you, sir. I too really appreciate what you're doing going into the prisons. You've shared some of those conversations with me, and it is just stunning. The like you said, you mentioned it earlier, the reaction, the empowerment that you're giving these lovely people to see themselves differently than what their past is an incredible reframe, incredible restart on their own infinite journey. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add one more thing. The whole idea of, oh, I'm just a this, or I'm going to survive. It's like, it's an environment where people are actually geared up and girding themselves for a judgment coming down on them. And when that doesn't come, that's an amazing thing. Even outside of the jail, when people are like, buy into that justification or the reason why, or people actually kind of like, you can feel this lifting. It's like, wow, I mean, are you safe? Is it safe for me to talk with you? And people, as their heart leads them, and that because that desire is burning there all the time.
Sure.
And it just kind of breaks all the way through those breaks through all of that surface stuff and comes to light, and then it's a whole different conversation. And so yeah.
And you've got a team of people, right, that are going in and helping?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is when I bring a volunteer in, they come in with their own little paradigms or their own little pathways or their own little experiences. Well, I'm probably not going to be good at this, or man, I don't really have anything to share. And I go, we always have everything to share, but share as you're led to share. And this is as much your show as it is their show and my show. And they go, so you're not the boss man? Well, no, I mean, there is a boss man. He ain't me.
Yeah.
God's presiding here. Okay. And they go, wow. And so you can see it. You can see that come through, and that confidence. And it's real. It's not bluster. It's like, wow, proud of you, man. And it's like, and the wish is, I hope I can bless these folks. And what they take away is, something I'm kind of thinking, who got blessed there more?
Yeah.
They all thank me, but I want to thank them too.
Right.
And it's like, go with it. Go with it. Because it's like, that's the light of God going there. And it's like people just scratch their heads, like as I did years ago, and going, I got to go over there and do some of my jail service, versus now it's like, I get to do this 6, 7, 8 times a month. This is great.
Talk about destroying the golden path fallacy right there in the prisons. I love that. So you're helping not only the other volunteers that are going in, but the inmates there with knowledge of their blueprint. You're giving them a chance to do this in their own way. And then encouraging them to do so, to find their own way, to find their own voice and the way to share it with the inmates. And then because you're doing that, they're actually open to the inmates sharing back with them. What beautiful synergy you're creating in potentially one of the most desolate environments on the planet.
And one of those components is law enforcement.
Mm.
And the opportunities that I've had to converse on the way in and out with the deputy body, and it's kind of like they look at you like, man, nobody takes an interest in me. And it's like, hey, tell me, how did you get into this line of work? You're 2 years in? What is it? And you want a street patrol or you? And they, wow, and they just light up.
Of course.
And it's like, yeah. And I'm just shutting up and going, yeah. And so, yeah, it's just a blessing.
You're doing you. This is something that's unique to the practitioners. There's this group of people that I adore, and some of them are here, right here. And I find that we as a group of practitioners, we dismiss in ourselves a series of things that we do through the blueprint process that make us so helpful for people. And that is, we ask questions and then we listen very carefully, because we as a group of practitioners absolutely adore people. We find people so fascinating, and we want to do whatever we can to help them promote and to gain their potential. But we as practitioners, it's interesting, we tend to dismiss that about ourselves. Well, I just ask some questions. It's no big deal. I'm just standing there looking at them and watching them, observing them. I'm just here for them. It's no big deal. And yet I hear back from people again and again and again. No, dude, you don't understand. That's what made the difference. Is you looked at me as if I mattered. And so then I started to question, well, maybe I do matter. And then, of course, we don't just listen, we record. We're like scientists. We're people scientists. That's what we are. We love people so much that we study them. We know that each one of you is so unique. And we're fascinated to find that uniqueness. We don't know what it's going to be. Each person is different. Each blueprint is one of a kind. And it's by design. So yes, you're representing, Frank, exactly what we tend to diminish, and yet is the most valuable thing that we can do on this planet right now. And that's to make people feel so special that we're treating them as if there's no one else in the room and nothing else is going on. And they get that treatment sometimes only from us.
You bring up, I've learned this also from you and the way you talk with me. And I found myself in the past, I would be afraid to go deeper. We just kind of go like this, like a party conversation. Yeah. When people say something and you don't ever let me get away with that. And I actually get a kick out of doing that out there. It's like, hey, can I stop you there for a second? Tell me more about that one thing. And people just kind of go, what? Some have actually vocalized. You actually listen to what I'm saying. I go, yeah, I want you to tell me about that.
Yeah.
How is it that you studied there?
Right.
Or how is it that you wound up doing whatever?
Yeah.
And people kind of go, and then you have the opportunity to go deeper and get out of yourself. Instead of, well, I don't want to be too nosy. I love being nosy.
And our people love that because they're not used to that. They, if you've noticed, when people share, they're a little hesitant, like, they probably don't care about this, so I'm just going to rush on to the next thing. And we, as a group of practitioners, are like, oh, wait a minute. You're taking the cake. Bring it back.
I've purchased programs and books in the past of how to have a conversation with someone. Really? I know how to have a conversation with people. I got a blueprint.
Right. It's in your blueprint to do so. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Frank. Any shares, Seth? We kind of cut you off last time. Do you want to kick us off?
From a practitioner standpoint, when you hear so many different stories, we pick up on nuances of conversation, as you mentioned. One of the pieces that I've also cannot not pay attention to now is a level of story without the right words attached to it,
Oh.
because we're trying to express things in a way to manage the other person's reaction or impression of me a
Ah,
lot of times.
yes.
So I hear that now more than ever. Like I almost can't have conversations in public because I'll never come home. Because I pick up on all that stuff, or I end up having counseling sessions in the plumbing aisle at Lowe's, just talking to one of the workers. You just notice all that stuff. But I don't want to, I'm not discounting that, because I think in that discovery, when people are sharing stories, they're testing the waters a little bit. There's a trust aspect that people are trying to ascertain before they give you the real parts of the story. But having a group of people that are willing to do that is hugely important and work time. Because in day-to-day stuff, I want to talk to you for a few minutes to see your ideas, but then let's get on with it, because I check the block and we can go on to life and work stuff right now. So being able to dive deep on that stuff, hugely important.
Yeah, agreed. And I appreciate that what you said about how, hey, that's okay, because they're kind of testing the waters to see if they can trust you before they open up. So I appreciated that perspective. But yeah, it's something. And by the way, for those of you listening, we meet as a group once a month at the beginning of the month. And the reason why we do that is so that we can do this for each other. What we do for our clients, we do this for each other, so that we have a little safe community where we get to talk through things. But then also we meet at the beginning of every month to plan this webinar for the end of the month, because we each have because we do these conversations, these intimate conversations where people are saying things to us that they would never say even to their family. We know collectively what people are grappling with today, and then we take that information and we put together this webinar. So if you're listening to this and you may not be one of our clients, but you want us to address something on one of these webinars, let us know. You can message any of us. I think most of us are on LinkedIn. You could definitely find us on our website, which is blueprintprocess.com. And gosh, we'd be so happy to include whatever it is you're going through in our webinars. Because as I say, we get together at the beginning of the month and hash out what we need to share with the world at the end of the month, so that the world gets closer and closer to what our main purpose is as a group, which is to get Blueprint in the hands of every person. We have a couple more minutes here. Anybody else want to share or wrap up? Yeah, Brandon.
Something that came up for me when Frank was talking, and it was when you talked about the people that go in with you on this ministry into the jails, kind of helping, and just thinking like, well, I don't have anything to share. Like, what am I supposed to do? Why would anyone want to listen to me? And it just the word enough
Mhm.
came to me, and like so, I'm so guilty of this in my career. I'm getting ready to speak to a large group, right? Or I'm getting ready to go talk to the boss or go whatever. And it's like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? Like, what do I have to bring to the table? And man, the realization as I went through my own blueprint process with Tammy, the realization that like we all have enough. We have what we need inside. Like just be you. Like just lean into you.
Mhm.
Lean into your blueprint. That's it. You don't have to say the perfect thing. You don't have to facilitate the perfect class. You're just there. Like, and if you're the one who was called to be there for that thing, then lean into your blueprint and bring it and recognize that you are enough.
Oh, what a beautiful way to sign us off, dude. Thank you. Just lean into who you are. You don't have to manufacture anything because you have it all within you. Thank you. That is a lovely way to wrap it up. We love you all, whether we know you or not. We love you. And we'll see you, as I say, next month. And I believe, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's December 18th. The third Wednesday in December at noon Pacific, right here, same Zoom link. And please reach out to any of us if you've got an idea that or something that you're going through that you'd really like some help on. We would love to incorporate it in our webinars. What's the point in us getting together each month if we're not helping you and leaning into our blueprints so that you can lean into yours? All right, thanks all, and have a great Thanksgiving tomorrow.
Happy
Great,
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. God bless.